Hi, it is January 2018. I am Deborah Pietsch, and it has been 2 years since I have done anything in the public and any type of recordings or whatnot. And it's been quite a journey. And Scott and I have had we've got a lot to share and have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes. This is the first time that I've done a series of videos about myself. And the guidance that I have gotten and the reason to do it is because I'm going to be sharing a lot of information that is now very time sensitive in regards to what's unfolding on the planet now, as well as what is that hasn't occurred yet. So it's important for you, should you choose to continue to engage with me, with us, to know who I am, what my background is, where I've come from, and the experiences I've had, in order to be here presenting to you the information, the wisdom, and providing you with tools, insights, webinars, courses, all of the different things. There's so much disinformation out there, and there are so many charlatans that are expressing channeled information that is not valid. And I'm going to be addressing a lot of that. But right now, I'd like to share with you who I am and where I've come from. So I'm going to start back in 1985, 84, 85. I had gotten guidance, and I didn't really realize back then it was telepathic communication, to move to a different location. I was living in Pennsylvania. I was working and going to college, and I got the guidance to live in a different place. And the two places I was guided to look at was Tallahassee, Florida, and Los Angeles, California. And if any of you are from the East Coast, and back then I was a major country bumpkin, to make that kind of a move at 19 or 20 years old was huge. So I went and visited both locations and made the decision to move to LA. And I didn't love the idea of moving away from, family and all of that, and or all of the upheaval that was going to create. And yet I never wavered in my decision. And so basically I showed up in LA, Long Beach specifically, in January of 1985, and figured things out, went to the campus, found a roommate, and the kind of goes on from there. Literally, I showed up with my suitcases and just kind of figured things out. So I thought at that time that I was going to be a cop. I thought I was moving to LA to be a cop. I was a criminal justice major. That's what I was focusing on in my college studies. I actually just gone to London the year before and spent 2 weeks with the Bobbies over there and going through the court systems and learning all sorts of things. And that was my first international travel experience. So within that first year, a lot of things happened. And I spent time with people that were from the LA Academy, Police Academy, and I realized I was going to have to change my personality tremendously in order to do that job. And the guidance I got was that was not the path. Then I ended up falling into Hollywood, the entertainment industry. The doors just swung open in ways that most people would be like, oh my gosh, that was just like divine destiny. And it really was. I literally went into Hollywood. MTV had just launched. And I went into Hollywood to visit a childhood friend's sister. And she was on a set. She was working with a production company. It actually was Yanni, the pianist's first music video. and she was doing craft service, which is putting the food out. And she told me then that U2 was coming into town to do a music video, and I loved U2. So I asked if I could be on the set, and she said, well, why don't you work on it? And I was like, I don't even know anything. One thing led to another. And basically, I went in and introduced myself to the company, Country Bumpkin, and just said I would do the craft service for free. She showed me what to do. And they hired me on the spot to be their first receptionist. Turns out they became a huge production company. And some of the top directors came from that production company. Yes, I got to work on the Streets with No Name U2 video. And if you ever go back and look at it, I mean, it was an epic experience, epic. We got shut down. There was a mass rush of people to our downtown location. And we were the shoot was on a rooftop. And there were people climbing up telephone poles and street lights, and it was an absolute mob scene and amazing. And I actually got to be on the roof for a while during all the different shots and whatnot. So that was my entry into the entertainment industry. And then a year later, in '87, I did a personal development seminar. And it was very heart-oriented. It was all experiential. It was very deep work, and it changed my life forever. And it was in the advanced version of that course where I was very open. And this was the kind of thing that there were 200 people at, and this is 1987. And I was being communicated with. Now, I refer to that now as a transmission. It was a very clear, very detailed telepathic communication that came through, and as if somebody was sitting next to me. And the information that came through was very detailed in regards to why the doors to the entertainment industry had opened, what I was here on the planet to do, why I was having the experiences that I was having. And I'm going to keep using the word experiences, because what I was being told is that I was here to utilize the media to create experiential, transformational media, just like what I was experiencing in this personal development seminar. Now, at the time, I thought everybody had that type of communication, and it was quite profound, to say the least. And then, of course, it took a while for me to figure out that not everybody had that kind of detailed communication. So from that point forward, I basically was living kind of a double highway life. I was moving, very committed to moving up the ranks through the entertainment industry, as well as simultaneously absorbing every aspect of awakening that I could. Webinars, seminars. Well, they didn't have webinars back then. We didn't have webinars yet, but seminars and books and all sorts of different things. Now, simultaneously, I actually had read a book by Brian Weiss, his first book, Many Lives, Many Masters, and it spoke to me greatly. And I ended up traveling to San Francisco and did an event there where it was like, I thought that there would be hundreds of people there. And as it turns out, there were like 20. And Dr. Raymond Moody was there, and they were speaking about reincarnation. They were speaking about the communications that come from other dimensions. And if you haven't read or heard of Many Lives, Many Masters, I highly recommend it. It was another pivotal turning point in my life. I ended up inviting Dr. Weiss for lunch, and that was quite funny because it was certainly me expanding out of my country bumpkin persona or beingness or whatnot. And the funny thing is there was a reporter there, and she was standing there talking to him as well at the same time at the break when I asked would he like to go to lunch. And she looked at me after. She's like, "Can I join you?" I was like, "Yeah, of course." And she said to me, "Oh my gosh, I would never have had the chutzpah to ask him that." So it was those kind of experiences that kept me very open to gaining information and knowledge. Now, for those of you that were awake or awakened back in that time frame, 1987 was the harmonic convergence. So many amazing things were happening. Now, I actually tried to, Brian and I stayed in touch, and I tried to get his book adapted for a movie. And we talked, and we started to go down that road. And then he basically ultimately decided I couldn't option the book because the main character really didn't even want him to write the book. So my point in even sharing that is that all the way back in, let's say, 1989, I was working. I say that because all the way back in 1989, I was already focusing on conscious type of media. I started working with a writer to develop a TV series around that same subject matter and genre. So basically for the next decade in the 90s, I went through a lot of different meetings about conscious media. Conscious Choices was another one. And basically I would go into these meetings and they'd look at me like I had three heads. It was so not the topic of conversation or topic of meetings or anything that they ever thought would get off the ground. Now, then and now are very different. Things are really finally starting to change. Then I got the guidance to actually leave the industry. So before 9/11, it was 1999, I basically said I was not going to do any more production. And then I got the guidance to go to radio. And I met the gal who I started producing her radio show that she had just launched called The Aware Show. And that's Lisa Garr. She's still on the air. She's done magnificently. And it was my opportunity to utilize for several years the airwaves to bring consciousness and awareness and cutting edge spirituality, cutting edge health. We had people... I had people like Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Reverend Michael, Carolyn Mace, Doreen Virtue, all those cats that are quite well known now, especially because of Hay House, which didn't exist yet. Or if it did, it was still not very well known back then. And it was amazing. I produced seminars with all those people and really tried to set some things up that... Another thing I did, I think in 2003, I created a weekly talk series that was in person. It was called Creating Community Through Conscious Conversation. And that was very successful for a while as well. So it was those kind of experiences that really put me, now that I look back and the experiences and what I've learned and what's been communicated to me, it really put me kind of in the limelight of putting my hand up in now what we refer to as the matrix and being noticed. I had no idea. I had no idea back then how much I was being tracked and how much what the challenges that started back then had to do with infiltration and to keep me down. And so this is where it started, but of course it took another couple of years for me to have the communication and to understand what was going on. So from that point, I started. I actually got the guidance to stop doing the radio show, and I thought that my place was still going to be as a producer behind the scenes. And I launched an agency called Living Light Agency. And I had clients for web development. This is like 2005, 6, 7. I had clients that were spiritual healers and teachers that a lot of them, some of them had actually been on the Aware show. And I was supporting them to create their foundation and their platform and their websites and their internet strategies. And I was learning about all of the internet, in affiliate programs and internet strategies, all of that back then. And then I got the guidance to go to edit that out. Then between 2005 and 2008, I started having crazy experiences of not being able to make a penny to save my life, literally. And I don't know if I'd actually be on the planet right now if it wasn't for somebody I was in a relationship with, absolute earth angel, and financially stable. He helped me financially. It was so humiliating, and I'd never experienced anything like it in my life. I always manifested with grace and ease, and I didn't even know back then it was manifesting, but it was. Actually, I did know by then because I started studying the Abraham material right after she came out in 89, I think it was, and even had some private sessions with her. So I knew about law of attraction. I knew about deliberate creation. I had the tools. I'd already been on that journey of awakening and gaining spiritual tools and doing all sorts of seminars for 15 plus years. So when this started occurring, I was at a loss. Everything that I was trying failed. And I finally, in 2008, reached out to somebody that had been a client. I was media coaching her. And I hadn't talked to her in 3 years. And one of the only people on the planet, even to this day, that I trust, as much as I now trust myself multidimensionally. And I reached out to her and I said, I don't know what the hell is going on. I am having experiences that I cannot, I have no comprehension about fear, paralysis, not being able to make money. Nothing that I was doing was working. Well, we ended up talking on the 10th of November, 2008. She called me out of I had called a week ahead before asking if I could do a session with her. And so she had a cancellation. So the following day, on 11/11/2008, at 11 in the morning, we had our session. And it was another pivotal turning point. And she was able to clear the infiltration energy, which I still didn't know what infiltration energy was, and infiltration was. And the very next day, I was living in Venice Beach. The very next day, I went to the beach, and I was still calling it meditation back then. And I sat and I started to meditate, and all of a sudden, these guides that I had already been communicating with years prior came rushing in. And what I was being shown was a party hats, party balloons. And what they said to me floored me. They said, we have not been able to reach you. You have been a POW. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? You've been a prisoner of war. Well, what? And I'm going to be introducing Robin to you guys because we're actually going to be doing some work together now. Robin is the gal that I had the session with, and we work now side by side in some really awesome things. And what they said to me in that communication was, you've been a POW. And that is when I started to understand that this goes far beyond what we see in this dimension. This goes far beyond what most people are talking about. Again, that was a pivotal turning point. My life started to up-level again, and I started to be able to create and manifest again. That led to 2009. I was guided, kicking and screaming, to go up to Mount Shasta and then to Ashland, Oregon, and that area. So I kind of interchange Mount Shasta and Ashland. They're 70 miles apart, but they're all part of the Lemurian ley line, and they're all part of the telos. If you're not familiar with all this right now, then it is part of what I'm going to be talking about and sharing about. And it's why Mount Shasta is one of the spiritual mecca areas of the planet, but is very shut down. I then had an experience in my motorhome, summer solstice 2009. I had gone to an event up in Ashland, Oregon. I had a client who was speaking at this event, and it was very high vibration, raw foodist who was having his wedding and created a whole event with speakers and all sorts of things. So I decided to take my motorhome up there, and I was going to actually, instead of leaving it in LA, I was going to put it in storage up in that area. And then that is when I had the first major visitation of an ascended being, that I spent a week in communication with this being, getting all sorts of details, all sorts of information, and it was humbling beyond words. And it was a turning point for me again to switch gears to another level of my revealing of my soul matrix destiny, and why I actually started working in front of the camera, which was quite daunting, and started to realize that I had more to share than just being a producer behind the scenes. So me being in front of the camera was quite challenging, and it came after many details of communication and initiations and then confirmations, which I'm always looking for in this dimension of all aspects of my telepathic communication. So that was a turning point, and what I'd like to do is just share one more thing. The infiltration started again. And in 2010, I had very, very challenging experiences that finally my telepathic communication was so clear that my guide said, "You're going to need to go back to LA. We cannot protect you." And that is when I started to be taught about becoming an untouchable and masterful and clearing energies. So I'm going to leave it at that in regards to who I am. And in the next video, share with you how I utilize the telepathic communication to be taught, and then realized I was an activator, and go from there. If you're still with me on this, thank you for engaging. Thank you for being here. Scott and I are very excited about coming back out and being in the public and sharing everything that we have been working with behind the scenes for the last couple of years especially. And it is an amazing time to be alive and to be awake. As always, we're in this together. The most important relationship is a loving relationship with thyself, and we are going to see this through. I'm Deborah Pietsch. You are transcending the matrix. Namaste.